Okay, today we're going to talk about writing equations, and you got two that we're going to look at, factored form and vertex form. So with factored form, this is the form that you should be writing your equation into. So you're going to start with f of x or y. Remember, f of x and y mean the same thing, equals. You'll have some number here where a is. We'll talk about it in a minute, what kind of number. Parentheses, x, and then you'll have your two roots or your two zeros right here. So x plus or minus something, and then the other one's x, another plus or minus something. Okay, in vertex form, very similar. You have either f of x or y equals, again, an a, and then instead of having two roots, now you have a vertex, and it's going to be x minus the first part of your vertex squared plus the second part of your vertex. It's always in this form. So let's see how that looks. So in factored form, let's say that I have the zeros, and you've already done this before, are going to be x equals 3 and 5. Those were your two zeros when you solved it. It came from this form. So remember that when you solved it, you want to know what x was. So the signs ended up being opposite. Well, they're still going to be the same here. So the zeros would be coming from x minus 3 and x minus 5. And you can always solve it. What x makes this equal to 0? Well, 3, because 3 minus 3 is 0. And same thing with 5. If you do 5 minus 5, you get 0. So the signs are always opposite. So if they're positive here, they're negative here. And vice versa. If I had negative numbers, then they're going to switch signs again, and they're going to be plus 3 and plus 5, because when you plug these in for x, negative 3 plus 3 is 0, and negative 5 minus 5 is 0. So just remember, when you have the zeros, you plug it in, they're going to switch signs. Okay, now we got to talk about this a. This a is telling you whether or not it opens up or if your parabola opens down. When a is positive, it's shaped like a U shape and it opens up. If a is negative, it's shaped like a rainbow and it opens down. So for our purposes, we don't care what the value of a is. I just want to know if it's positive or negative. So I'm going to just let you pick any old a you want. But if it's opening it up, pick an a that's positive, and it opens down, pick an a that's negative. So let's say that I have zeros of 3 and 5 and it opens up. Then I would have an example that looks like this. Y equals, or f of x equals, if it needs to open up, it needs to be positive. So how about 3, parentheses, x minus 3, x minus 5. This would be acceptable. Okay, any value here, as long as it is positive, will work. And this needs to be x minus 3, and this must be x minus 5. Now let's say in our other example that we have it opened down. Okay, so we already have this, so now I need either your y or f of x equals, and I need a negative number here. So pick any negative number you want, say like negative 5, and then it's negative 5 for the opening down. As long as it's negative, it's fine. And x plus 3, x minus 5 for our two zeros. So you have now written the equation two different times using factored form. That's all it is. You take your two zeros, switch the sign, plug them in, and if it opens up, pick an a that's positive, and if it opens down, you pick an a that's negative. Okay, now vertex form, instead of having the zeros, you end up with the vertex. And the vertex, remember, is going to be in this form, h comma k. So I have some number, say like 2 comma 3, and we're going to just plug these in. And just like a up here, a means the same thing. So if it's positive, it opens up, and if it's negative, it opens down. So let's say that I have the vertex, we have that over here, never mind, I'll have to write again. Vertex of 2 comma 3, and we're going to open up. So I'm going to start with my f of x or my y equals. For openings up, I need some positive number, so let's pick like 2. And then it says x. Now here's where you got to be careful. The h, you're going to switch the sign. The k does not switch the sign. So the x one switches sign. You can remember this because x almost always switches sign. We're going to keep working on that. But it did up here. It does here too. So the x switches sign. So instead of a positive 2, it's going to be negative 2. And then this must be a square. Okay, it comes from the form right here. That square must be there. Do not forget that square. And then outside, sign stays the same, so I have a 3, so you just write plus 3, and you're done. There's an example of an equation that opens up and has a vertex at 2 comma 3. Let's do one more. Let's say I have a vertex at negative 2 comma negative 3, and this one we're going to open down. So I start with either f of x or y equals. Opens down means I need a negative a, so pick some negative number. I pick negative 3. Pick anything you want. I get parentheses here. Starts with an x. Opposite sign, so the negative 2 is going to become a plus 2. Don't forget your square on outside that. And then sign stays the same for the y, so I write minus 3. And you have just written your equation in vertex form. On the quiz, you need to be able to know If I give you the zeros and it tell you which direction opens, you should be able to write me an equation in factored form. Same thing if I give you the vertex and the opens direction, you should be able to write me an example equation in vertex form. All right, that's your examples right now. So go do some practice problems, and I will answer questions if you have any.